I met John shortly after graduating from college. He swept me off my feet with his charm and ambition, and before I knew it, we were married and living in the small apartment he had purchased before our wedding. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and I loved every inch of it. Soon after, our daughter Sarah was born, perfect, with John's blue eyes and my curly hair. It felt like we had everything: a loving family, a cozy home, and promising careers ahead of us. I started working as a secretary at a small but growing company. The pay wasn't great, but I enjoyed the work and got along with my coworkers. John, on the other hand, was making strides at his construction firm. He'd come home with stories about big projects and even bigger deals. I was proud of him, even though his long hours often meant I was alone with Sarah. But over time, something in John changed. He'd come home late, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Who called?" he'd demand. "Why were you all dressed up?" At first, I laughed it off, but soon his jealousy became suffocating. One night, after a long interrogation about a work event, I snapped, "You think I'm cheating?" "With who, John?" "The mailman." He didn't crack a smile. "Don't play dumb, Kelly. I see how men look at you. And your boss, he's happily married with 3 kids. I cut him off, desperate. "For God's sake, John, I'm your wife. I love you." But my words fell on deaf ears. The arguments became more frequent, each one chipping away at our marriage. I had always been faithful, always would be, but his distress was poisoning everything. Through it all, Sarah remained blissfully unaware. At 10, her world revolved around school, friends, and her iPad. I tried to shield her from our fights, but kids always know more than we think. The irony wasn't lost on me. John was the one always coming home late, always going on business trips. If anyone had reason to be suspicious, it was me. But I trusted him. I believed in our vows, in our love. Why couldn't he do the same? One night, after a particularly nasty fight, I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling. John's soft snores filled the room, but I felt a million miles away from him. How had we gotten here? When had love turned into suspicion? Trust into accusation? I thought about leaving, about taking Sarah and starting over. But where would we go? What kind of life could I give her on a secretary's salary? And despite everything, I still loved John, the man he used to be, the man I hoped he could be again. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, life threw me another curveball. My mom, the rock I'd always leaned on, had a stroke. It came out of nowhere, leaving us all reeling. Mom had always been healthy, throwing herself into gardening and book clubs after Dad's death. She lived in a gorgeous house in the fancy part of town, courtesy of Dad's life insurance and smart investments. I used to joke that she was living the life of a retired movie star. But that Tuesday morning changed everything. I got the call at work. Mom couldn't speak, couldn't move her left side. I rushed to the hospital, my heart in my throat. The next few weeks were a blur of hospitals, doctors, and terrifying medical jargon. I visited every top clinic in the area, desperate for someone to tell me that Mom would be okay. But the prognosis wasn't good. The stroke had left her bedridden, needing round-the-clock care. I was overwhelmed. How could I take care of Mom, manage my job, look after Sarah, and deal with John's jealousy all at once? It felt like drowning in slow motion. Then, out of the blue, John suggested something. "We should move into your mom's house," he said one night over dinner. I nearly choked on my pasta. "What?" "Think about it, Kelly," he continued, his eyes lighting up. "It's a great house in a fantastic neighborhood. Sarah would have her own room, maybe even a playroom. Your mom needs care, and you'd be right there. Plus, we could rent out this apartment for some extra cash." I had to admit, it made sense. Mom's house was far nicer than our apartment, and the idea of not having to commute to take care of her was appealing. But still, it felt weird. "I don't know, John. It's Mom's house. We can't just barge in." He insisted. "I bet she'd love the company. It's better than a nursing home, right?" He had a point. Mom had always made it clear she didn't want to end up in a nursing home. Maybe this could work. The next day, I brought up the idea with Mom. To my surprise, her face lit up at the suggestion. "Oh, Kelly," she said, her voice weak but excited. "I'd love that. This old house needs some life in it again." And just like that, it was decided. We were moving into Mom's house. As I started packing up our apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something big. But I didn't know if it would be good or bad. John was over the moon about the move. He kept talking about the garden he'd plant, the man cave he'd set up in the basement. Even Sarah seemed excited about having a bigger room. Moving into Mom's house brought a whole new set of challenges. Taking care of a stroke patient was a full-time job, one I wasn't equipped to handle on my own. After a week of sleepless nights and stress-filled days, I hired a nurse to help during the day. Nurse Jenny was a godsend. She arrived every morning at 8 and stayed until 6, taking care of Mom's basic needs. But evenings and nights were all on me. I'd come home from work, exhausted, only to start my second shift as Mom's caretaker. The stroke had affected her speech, leaving her frustrated and often silent. I'd change her diaper, giving her as much dignity as I could. Then came the sponge bath, the massage to keep her muscles from atrophying, the meds, and finally dinner. It was grueling work, both physically and emotionally. Seeing my vibrant, independent mother reduced to this state broke my heart every day. But I did it because I loved her, because she would have done the same for me. What I didn't expect was Sarah's reaction to her grandmother's condition. At 11, I thought she'd be old enough to understand, to help out even. But boy, was I wrong. One evening, as I was heading to Mom's room, I saw Sarah dart past me, her hand clamped firmly over her nose. "Sarah," I called out, "where are you going? Don't you want to say hi to Grandma?" She shook her head violently. "No way. It smells gross in there." I was taken aback. "Sarah, that's not a nice thing to say. Grandma needs our help and support right now." "I don't care," she spat back, her voice full of disdain. "She's disgusting. I'm not going near her." Before I could say anything else, she stormed off to her room, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, stunned and hurt, trying to process what had just happened. Where had my sweet little girl gone? I turned to John for support, but when I needed him most, I found nothing. "Not my problem," he would say every time I asked for help with Mom. "I didn't sign up for this." It stung, but I couldn't entirely blame him. None of us had signed up for this life. Still, as I watched him play video games with Sarah or take her out for ice cream while I was elbow deep in adult diapers and medication schedules, I couldn't help but feel resentful. The one silver lining, though, was seeing how close John and Sarah had become. They'd always had a good relationship, but now it seemed even stronger. I'd hear them laughing together in the living room or see them huddled over Sarah's homework at the kitchen table. It warmed my heart, even as it made me feel more isolated. 2 years passed in a blur of bedpans, medications, and stolen moments of sleep. Mom's condition had stabilized, but she still required constant care. I was exhausted, but I had found a rhythm, just barely. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday, everything fell apart. The phone rang while I was changing Mom's sheets. It was Mrs. Peterson, our old neighbor from the apartment complex. "Kelly, dear," she said, her voice laced with concern. "I thought you should know. I've been seeing John around quite a bit with a company of young women, different ones, always very pretty." I thanked her and hung up, my mind reeling. That night, I confronted John. "Oh, those are just potential tenants," he said smoothly, brushing me off, and showing them the apartment. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the seed of doubt had already been planted, and it was growing like a weed. A week later, I found the lipstick stain. It was on the collar of his white shirt, a perfect crimson kiss. My hand shook as I held it up to the light, trying to convince myself it was just a pen mark or a food stain. But deep down, I knew better. I waited until his next business trip to make my move. With trembling hands, I unlocked the door to our old apartment. The sounds coming from the bedroom confirmed my worst fears before I'd even opened the door. There was John in our bed with a woman I'd never seen before. They scrambled to cover themselves, but the damage was done. "What are you doing here?" John exclaimed, not even having the decency to look ashamed. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at the scene before me, feeling my world crumble around me. "Look, Kelly," he said coldly, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but let's be honest. I'm bored. You're always busy with your mom. This is exciting." His words cut deeper than any knife. Without a word, I turned and left, my mind already racing toward what I needed to do next. The divorce proceedings were ugly. John fought me every step of the way. But in the end, we stood before a judge dividing up our life together as if it were nothing more than assets on a balance sheet. Then came the hardest part, custody of Sarah. At 12, Sarah was old enough to have a say, and her choice broke my heart. "I want to live with Dad," she declared, her voice steady. "I don't want to be around Grandma anymore. It's gross and depressing, and Mom's always trying to make me help." The judge nodded sympathetically, taking into account John's higher income, the stability he could provide, and Sarah's clear preference. In the end, John was awarded primary custody. I was devastated, but I tried to focus on what was best for Sarah. John could offer her opportunities I couldn't: private school, dance lessons, summer camps. We agreed on weekends and holidays for me, a schedule that looked neat and tidy on paper but felt like a gaping wound in my heart as I watched Sarah pack her things, excitedly chatting about her new room at Dad's. I felt like I was losing everything. My marriage was over. My daughter was leaving, and I was left with a house that felt more like a hospital than a home. The first few months after the divorce were tough, but I clung to my weekends with Sarah like a lifeline. We'd go to the movies, have ice cream in the park, or just hang out at home. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Then, slowly, things began to change. Sarah started canceling plans. "I have a sleepover," she'd say. "Dad's taking me to a concert." I tried to be understanding, to be the cool mom who didn't make a fuss, but each cancellation felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Soon, the cancellations became more frequent. Weeks would go by without a visit. My calls went straight to voicemail, and text messages were met with one-word responses, if I got any response at all. One Sunday, after yet another canceled visit, I decided to call Sarah directly. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I tried again. This time, a robotic voice informed me that the number I was trying to reach had blocked my calls. My hand shook as I dialed John's number. "What do you want, Kelly?" His voice was cold, annoyed. "John, I can't reach Sarah. She's blocked my number. What's going on?" There was a long pause. "Look, Kelly, Sarah doesn't want to talk to you right now. You need to respect that. She's my daughter. She's also a person with her own feelings," John shot back. "And right now, she doesn't want to be around all that negativity at your place. I mean, the sickness, the sadness. Sarah needs stability. She needs a normal family. She sees Lisa as a mother figure now. She's got a normal life here, 2 parents, no sick relatives, no drama. Why can't you just let her be happy?" I couldn't speak. Tears streamed down my face, and I was thankful John couldn't see me. "Look," he continued, his voice softening slightly, "I know this is hard, but if Sarah doesn't want to see you right now, you need to respect that. Don't force it. It'll only push her away more." I wanted to scream, to argue, to demand my rights as a mother, but a small, rational part of my brain whispered that he might be right. If I pushed too hard, I might lose Sarah forever. I sank to the floor, phone clutched to my chest, and sobbed. My little girl, my Sarah, didn't want me anymore. Someone else was being her mother, kissing her goodnight, helping with homework, sharing the moments I was missing. Mom found me hours later, still on the floor. She'd managed to shuffle over with her walker, her face creased with concern. "Kelly," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I looked up at her, this woman who'd been my rock for so long, who I'd been taking care of for years. In that moment, our roles reversed again. I was the child, seeking comfort from my mother. "Oh, Mom," I cried, reaching for her hand. "I've lost her. I've lost my baby girl." Mom squeezed my hand, her touch still weak but full of love. "No, Kelly, you haven't lost her. She's just lost right now. She'll find her way back to you. You'll see." 14 years, it's amazing how time can fly by and drag on simultaneously. Mom's condition improved slightly over the years. She regained some mobility and speech, but caring for her remained a full-time job. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep, I felt a mixture of grief and shamefully relief. Suddenly, I found myself alone in this big, empty house. The silence was deafening. No more beeping medical equipment. No more schedules for medications and therapy sessions. Just me, rattling around in rooms full of memories. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice, I'd know it anywhere. "Mom, it's Sarah. I was hoping we could meet to talk." We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown. As I waited, my hand shook around my coffee cup. I spotted a young woman entering. It took me a moment to realize it was Sarah. Gone was the gangly preteen I remembered. In her place stood a poised, beautiful young woman. "Hi, Mom," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. We made awkward small talk at first. She filled me in on her life, her job in marketing, her hobbies, her friends. Then she dropped the bombshell. "I'm getting married," she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. "Here's an invitation." My heart swelled with joy. and a tinge of sadness. My little girl, getting married, and I'd missed so much. Oh, Sarah, that's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you. She cut me off abruptly. Actually, Mom, that's kind of why I wanted to meet. I was hoping to talk about Grandma's inheritance. The house, her savings. I want them. I felt like I'd been slapped. Excuse me. Look, Mom, she said, leaning forward. That house is in a great area. It's worth a fortune. After the wedding, Jake and I want to live there. Start our family there. Anger bubbled up inside me. Sarah, you haven't set foot in that house in over a decade. You said it disgusted you. You called it a tomb. She waved her hand dismissively. I was just a kid then. But I've grown up now. Times have changed, and let's face it, I'm Grandma's only grandchild. She would have wanted me to have the house. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Wanted you to have it, Sarah. You didn't even come to her funeral. You didn't call or write for years. That's ancient history, she snapped. The point is that house should be mine. I deserve a comfortable life. Deserve? I asked, my voice shaking with rage. You didn't lift a finger to help when Grandma was sick. I gave up my life to care for her. And now you think you deserve her house. Sarah's face hardened. Fine, if that's how you want to play it, I'll sue. I'll get what's rightfully mine. She stood up abruptly, snatching the wedding invitation off the table. You know what? Forget it. You're not invited to the wedding. I don't need your negativity there, and I don't need your permission to take what's mine. I sat there, stunned. The daughter I had loved, missed, and longed for all these years was gone. In her place stood a stranger, cold, greedy, and unrecognizable. The days that followed our disastrous meeting passed in a blur of anger, grief, and a deep, numbing emptiness. But as time wore on, something unexpected happened. I felt relieved. The heavy weight of hoping for reconciliation, of longing for a relationship with Sarah, seemed to lift. In its place, there was a strange sort of peace. I didn't attend Sarah's wedding. I didn't send a gift or a card. Instead, I spent the day volunteering at a local animal shelter, finding comfort in the unconditional love of abandoned pets who needed care. It felt fitting somehow. Curiosity got the better of me a few days later, and I found myself scrolling through Sarah's social media. There she was, radiant in white, smiling up at her new husband. For a moment, my heart clenched with the pain of what might have been. But then I saw it. A long rambling post about her cruel mother who refused to attend the wedding and withheld her rightful inheritance out of spite. I read it twice, marveling at the sheer audacity of her lies. Part of me wanted to comment, to set the record straight, but what was the point? The people who mattered, my family, those who had seen me care for Mom all those years, knew the truth. As for everyone else, well, their opinions, based on a stranger's social media posts, weren't my concern. A week later, my cousin Jeannie called. Callie, I thought you should know, she said, her voice a mix of anger and concern. Sarah's been talking about suing you for your mom's estate. I sighed, not surprised. Let her try. That's just it, Jeannie continued. Apparently, she talked to a lawyer. He told her she doesn't have a leg to stand on. Your mom left everything to you, clear as day. I chuckled. Of course, Mom had made sure of that. She was always the practical one. Thanks for letting me know, Jeannie, I said. But honestly, I don't care what Sarah does anymore. She's made her choices. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Jeannie said, I'm proud of you, Kelly. After everything you've been through, you deserve some peace. As I hung up the phone, I looked around the house. Mom's house, now my house. Every corner held memories, some painful, some beautiful. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe here. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden Mom had loved so much. It had gotten a bit overgrown in recent years, but I could still see its potential. Maybe it was time to bring some life back to it. As I stood there, planning my next trip to the garden center, I realized something. The chapter of my life that revolved around Sarah, the hope, the pain, the longing, was finally closing. But that didn't mean my story was over. Far from it. The garden was in full bloom when the call came. I had spent the past few months throwing myself into its restoration, finding solace in the simple act of nurturing life. The roses Mom had loved so much were just starting to open, their scent filling the air. As I pruned the bushes, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press the green button. Hello. Mom. Sarah's voice, thick with tears. Mom, I need your help. I froze, the pruning shears still in my hand. Sarah, What's wrong? I'm pregnant, she sobbed, and we're struggling. Mom, I need money. You have to help me. You can't leave your grandchild without anything. I listened silently as her words became more frantic, more accusatory. You abandoned me, Mom. You never tried to contact me, never fought for me, and now you're going to abandon your grandchild too. Something inside me snapped, not with anger, but with calm, unshakable resolve. Sarah, I said, my voice steady. That's enough. She fell silent, probably shocked that I had interrupted her tirade. I never abandoned you, I said. I sent child support every month without fail. I called, I texted, I emailed. You blocked my number. You chose your stepmother. You made your decisions and I respected them, even when it broke my heart. Mom, no. I'm not finished, I said, cutting her off. You're an adult now, about to be a parent yourself. It's time you took responsibility for your choices and your life. I'm not your bank. I'm not your safety net. And I'm not going to be manipulated by lies and guilt trips. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line. If you need help, go to your father and stepmother. They're your real family now. Remember, the ones you chose. I took a deep breath. I've made my peace with that. Now you need to make peace with the consequences of your choices. You can't do this, Sarah cried. I'm your daughter. Yes, you are, I said, my voice softening slightly, and I'll always love the little girl you were. But I don't know the woman you've become, and I don't think I want to. I took another deep breath. Goodbye, Sarah. I wish you and your child well. But please, don't contact me again. I ended the call before she could respond. My hand shook slightly as I lowered the phone. For a moment, I stood there in the garden, surrounded by the life I had nurtured, feeling the weight of what had just happened. But then, slowly, I felt a lift. The last ties binding me to a painful past had been cut. The last what-ifs laid to rest. I looked around at the garden, at the house beyond. This was my life now, not defined by loss or regret, but by the choices I made going forward. I picked up my pruning shears and turned back to the rose bush. There was still work to be done, still beauty to cultivate. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt truly, completely free.